I got the juice, yeah, I got the juice. Whip game cool, make them look like cool. Always play cool, that's the biggest rule. Forget what they doing, keep on doing.
Auto malfunction.
What's up, everybody? I hope you had a safe, healthy, and happy 4th of July. Welcome to week 2 of the D3 eSports Cup Championship, powered by Forza and Microsoft. I'm your host, Carlos Figuerella, and I'm excited to be here to bring you some exciting Forza racing. I'm honored to be accompanied by a racing legend, Ian Dawson, the CEO of Dawson Racing. Ian, I'm excited to be your tag team partner for today's event. Thanks for being with us.
That's great, Carlos. Good to be here again. I think it's amazing how the last week's gone by, and I think we learned a lot from the first one, and hope everybody's going to be excited with the extra bit of content this week.
Absolutely. For those that are tuning in for the very first time, let's tell you a little bit more about what the D3 eSports Championship Cup is all about. We're excited to bring you some virtual racing production where we have 8 teams with a total of 16 drivers that will compete in 5 weeks of Forza racing. Ian, give us a little bit of an overview of today's event.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we've, our event is, again, as you just said, is we basically limited it in a sense at the moment. We've got 8 teams, 2 drivers in each team. Each team of cars is actually backed and covered by a commercial partner, which we're really excited about, and they'll stay stable through this first round of 5 events. We've got a combination of a pro driver, our own data engineer, actually people that have never done this before, some students, graduates, a whole cross section of people. So we're pretty excited as that learning platform moves forward.
Absolutely. And so this week, last week actually, we're at Road America. This week, we're at Brands Hatch. So we're really excited to continue this journey over the 5 weeks. Kind of give us a little overview of the rules and the scoring for the D3 eSports Cup Championship.
Okay, so it's said about, big thing here, and we've seen it. We've sent some little messages out where we saw in the last thing, some of these guys, if they drove on the street like that, somebody would be paying some pretty heavy insurance damage. But we were very lucky with it. But some of it's a little bit opportunism, really. It's like just trying to jump the red light when you shouldn't be. So we've tried to address that. So the regulations are very similar. The cars are identical to each other. Nobody can adjust anything on them. So it's the skill of the driver and not how they can actually set the car up. That's something that can come later on, and we're starting to assist some of the guys. And the impressive thing in the last event last weekend is we saw a real improvement from a lot of the guys who've never even been in this type of platform before. Over the 3 races, really make some big improvements. So as they score points for the positioning, those points will go into finale at the end, and that'll just carry over until we build a whole series of tournaments, and then there's some prizes given at the end of it.
Love it. Yeah, I think last week we saw as the racers were getting accommodated and acclimated to things, we saw some improvements. They were learning, applying those learnings into what they were experiencing. And just getting acclimated to the track and the racing conditions was really critical there. As we look at these going into these races, we expect these drivers to get better. Definitely performance will get streamlined. And overall, we think that the leaderboard and things are going to shake up over a few weeks. So excited to see how things all work out as we get to that 5th week of racing.
Absolutely, and I
Um,
think we saw some great racing. Certainly up at the front, which is what we expect. Through Nelson Mason, the Canadian, who's a professional, who's run with us in our LMP3. Ben Whetstone, who's our data engineer at Dawson Racing, who's a very established gamer in his own right. The pair of them really raced well against each other, and I think now we've seen through some of the discord that everybody's understand a little bit about competitiveness, and I think we're going to see a little bit more feistiness, as they say, in these today's tournaments. Let's hope everybody stays clean, and we're going to see everybody bunched up a little bit more. And they're entering into a different type of track here at Brands Hatch in England. We've chosen that from Road America, which is very open, high-speed circuit, to this very old traditional British circuit that used to run Formula One up until about 10 years ago. It's complicated, so it'll be very interesting to see.
Definitely. And so you mentioned last week Road to America, this week Brands Hatch. What are some of the differences as these drivers are transitioning that they should be, we should be seeing?
I think that the big things between the two circuits are the ability, whereas at Road America, you've got high, long straights, you've got fast sweeping corners and only one or two slow corners. Here at Brands Hatch, you've got a track which is got very few long straights. It's very complicated in some corners, speeds down in a lot of the corners, but you've really got to carry a exit speed in a lot of places. You've got a lot of off camber, which we're going to see as we go through the talk through. That means as you're trying to apply power, the circuit falls away from you a little bit. So you've really got to be careful on the throttle.
Love it. And for our audience, we've got a mix of drivers as well as a mix of setups. We have people that are going to be in sims, others that are going to be, using a traditional controller. So a bit of difference in technique, but nonetheless, as you mentioned, these experiences and the road conditions are going to be critical to how their performance turns out.
Absolutely, and I think
as we're all,
it's one thing. Yeah, sorry, as you say about the difference in the simulators. We've got some guys in really top end simulators, and we got some guys who and I made a joke last week of somebody bolted to the kitchen table, and it did actually come loose a little bit, but actually the equipment that they're working on the Forza 7 platform is the same, and that's really attainable to everybody that we're sort of broadcasting to.
Awesome. And just from your own personal experience at this track, what are some for you you've experienced when racing at Brands Hatch?
Yeah, I mean Brands Hatch. I did the last Formula One race there, so I think what I saw, and to give you an idea as we go into technical, I mean, when you raced there before, when we saw downforce and ground effects developed, this was a very tricky, a driver's track, a real driver's track. As we saw the downforce come in and the aerodynamics of cars, the speeds increased and increased to the point that that's one of the only reasons they stopped racing here in Formula One. The speeds here became so high. And one thing you will notice, the Armco, the barriers on the side of the track are very close. So it's still today a very functional track, and it's has a lot of fantastic racing in it, but it is a challenge to the drivers. So pretty excited to see everybody running here.
And to note, this kind of taking it to as we wrap up, I know that our drivers are getting ready for to get started here. So just looking at rules and scoring, we're going to bring up a few points to mention. You've covered some of them, but if you could just go over week 2 rules and scoring and what our viewers are seeing on the screen right now.
Yeah, so what you're seeing now is we did round 1, so every week we do a round of it. It's the best of 3 per round, move forward. It's what they call a Swiss format, so it's a starting line. It's not a rolling start; it's a standing start. So everybody's going to be very careful on the first corner here, particularly. And I think we'll see some challenges here because this is a blind corner going over a crest with the track falling away. So as far as the regulations are concerned, we're looking very carefully at driver etiquette, not trying to be opportunist and trying to overtake down the inside line, not making anybody into forced errors. Be competitive, but be safe.
Absolutely. And we're definitely making sure that this time we clean up some of those activities that you mentioned. We definitely keep in the spirit of positive racing and everybody just enjoying what they're doing out there. We're excited to bring you some video and kind of incorporate some of the things that we have going on behind the scenes as we're going to drivers and bringing in some of those sims that you talked about. I know that you've had quite a few sim setups in your day, and you guys have partnered out. What are some of the cool setups that you've seen drivers put together, especially with COVID and their inability to get on the racetrack?
Well, I think we've all seen it's just become unbelievable. I mean, you've got a lot of professional drivers who really needed to stay very constant, and so the simulation purchase has gone up. We're actually looking at a screen here. This is Ben Whitstone. Ben is our data engineer at Dawson Racing. He's at home, so this is a pretty nice facility that he's got, and Ben has been very competitive in sim racing over a number of years. And you're seeing here he's got a 3-screen Vanatech program, full rig. This is full steering motion. We actually stay away from the full seat motion, and you see this in some areas. A lot of professionals don't like it. It makes you a little nauseous. So Ben's on a lap here, and you're starting to see him sort of build himself up in his practice sessions. But very, very accurate. You've got some people that may have one screen and they have the steering wheel and the pedals, but they don't have the racing seat.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think really cool stuff. And we're going to show here a lap at Brands Hatch that, our drivers will experience today. And as you can see, this is taking from Ben's experience into this. Give us a few call outs that these drivers will see.
Right. So Ben is coming across the start finish line now. You see the track rising up here now. This starts to fall away. It's called Paddock Hill Bend. It's off camber here as you come. It's very easy to run wide on that corner. You're coming up to a corner called Druids. It's very tight. You've got to really keep a tight line. You've got to exit well. You've got to be careful a little bit here on the curbs. As you're coming down here now, this is Graham Hill. Many of the corners of this track are named after quite well-known, famous Formula One drivers. We're now going again this is Surtees. Again, very, very tight on the inside. You've got to be careful. You've got to exit here very well up over the crest. You're starting to see the barriers very close to the track. Doesn't give you a lot of room to make any errors. So we're coming down the back here now, and we're coming into a Hawthorne Bend, which is, as you can see with Ben here, he's trying to keep himself off the curbs there because no leeway at all. We're now going into Westfield. You go down the hill here, you're keeping very tight, you're really picking up the line through the corner, letting the car pick up on the inside curb here through a very famous corner called Dingle Bell, and maybe drop down the hill here. It doesn't show it too much, but you're coming up to a corner now which leads you now into the start finish straight again, and this is the last corner coming in as you get a dip in the road. Very tight track, very quick circuit, not a lot of time to take a breath.
Love it. Yeah, there's a lot, definitely a lot that our drivers are going to experience today, and excited to see how it all unfolds. I think, realizing how the real world enters the virtual world and your expertise, it's really exciting to hear you call those turns and talk about some of the history that Brands Hatch has.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And I think the difference, as we will go into probably later on, the sim racing line is sometimes a little different to the professional reality line. It's just, you got to remember, when they're driving a real car, you really feel everything. When you're in a sim, you sometimes have to imagine and have to have a lot more confidence to drive it. So, again, as the guys who've not done a lot of this start to build confidence and understand where their points are, a track like this compared to the last one, there is no place to get a breathing space. It's very, very much corner, more straight, corner, corner, corner. And it'll be really interesting to see how everybody adapts to this, because other than a little bit of training, I think Nelson might be one of the few people, well, he'd be the only person in here that's ever raced on this track professionally.
Wow. Yeah. And talking about professional drivers, how is the sim experience being incorporated into their practices and overall preparation for going into a race?
Again, I think as we've gone over before, simulation has become such a huge part of the professional sportsman, and a racing driver probably spends an enormous amount of time looking at everything. It's extremely accurate. It gives them an exact feel of what's going on. And I've seen through my experience drivers, Theodore Olsen, our Norwegian, when he went to Daytona at the beginning of last year, he did all his work in the simulator, and within 10 laps, he was the quickest car on track. And those things weren't really possible 10 years ago. And I think this has become an unbelievable, fantastic tool now for everybody. And it also allows, in a way, the beginning of the novice to arrive at places with a real inside knowledge of what's going on.
Awesome. Yeah, no, Ian, I think, kind of learning how the virtual world is impacting the real world, and hopefully when these drivers get back out there, they're seasoned and ready for what's to come. As we hear, our drivers are getting ready for our first race. For our audience, thanks for tuning in. We have 3 races in total, getting ready to kick off our first race here in about another 10 to 15 minutes. So everybody's getting settled in and ready to kick things off. As you saw, we saw some live shots of Ben in his sim, and everyone else is getting ready to get geared up. So really excited to kick things off here.
No,
so in terms of standings,
right? Yeah, we got the standing. So yeah, so Ben won 2 of them, and Nelson won 1. Nelson finished 3rd in one of the races, so his positioning is 1 behind Ben. I think the Zotac car, which again Brandon did a fantastic job, and he's has a partner, Ellis, with him in that car. I think we've got as we go down in these groups, there is a combination of drivers and actually business owners all the way down through the field who have now been able to really understand what's needed to do this and how we can actually make the racing really good in these next 3 races.
Definitely. And I think we touched on this last week. As it's all about learning, getting comfortable, applying those learnings. We're definitely going to see a shakeup in the leaderboard over the coming weeks, even today.
No, we will, and I think is remind the new audience maybe here today that this is very different to a lot of other platforms everybody's looking at, whereas we're trying to bring a whole combination of people into this that normally never get the chance to do this, or perhaps may have felt a bit intimidated to go in where there was 5 or 6 professionals all running at the front and didn't really want to try and enter it. This is very, very open. I think all of the guys have actually been talking to each other. Of course, they've all got competitive since last weekend as they're learning out, well, how do you do this? How do you do that? And we've helped 1 or 2 of them at the same time. And that's really what this is about. And that's part of why the STEM education program comes really into its own in this type of program, that we can actually go online and we can actually help people to learn how they can look at things in a different way. And Ben's doing the similar thing as a data guy. We've got, Nelson does this often, apart from racing professionally, actually coaching people. So there is a really good positioning here as we bring more and more people in, and the idea is to get everybody as competitive as possible and to learn how to race a car.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely something that gives you the ability, it democratizes racing to some degree, brings people in that might have seen it, been interested, but now get to actually start to experience it and learn more about everything that's happening behind the scenes that really brings that great production together.
No, very much so. And I think we, as we bring everybody in now, as you said, Carlos, that we get everybody in line and everybody positioned. There's even obviously some of the guys are also learning how to get everything set up sometimes. And this is something you haven't seen in any of the other racing series we've had, which some of them are fantastic to watch. But, this is a bit of a learning curve, not just in equipment, but actually in the personal ability to drive the car.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, we have some great partners that have helped, bring this all together. We're excited to talk about our partners and share more light around all the great things that they're doing. But, it's a team effort here, not only with Dawson Racing, but, everybody that's involved. If you could just share a little bit more about how that all has come together and what, excites you the most about it.
Well, I think, again, as we said, it isn't really just, it's not a lot to do with what the car is. It's to do with the commercial partner. And we've got, we're very fortunate here. We're showing for instance, the red Transformer cars, which you'll see, which is part, a huge brand, which Ben and Pablo are driving. We've got a white Transformer, which is really a Pro-Am car. And we've got Nelson Mason and Don in this and that car. The Audrey Museum, which is now got 3 simulators, and they're unbelievably successful in bringing people who've never actually attempted to try anything in a car. We have a STEM car, we have a Zotac car, we have a Viva car, America car, and a B&G car. And each one of these partners, in one way or the other, is developing from the real world into virtual, or they're coming in for the first time in the virtual world, ultimately to go real when we go back on track.
Definitely. And so, looking at everything that we've said, we've got the white Dawson Racing Pro-Am Transformer car with Nelson and Don, STEM.org car with Scott and Zach. Audrain is great partnership there with Ben Chester and Antonio Green driving that car. We have Zotac with Brandon, and this week we also have Alessio who's in Italy, who will be driving. America with Joel Steele and Jeff Curran. Then we have the black and gold car with Caesar. And then Viva is Sydney and Tim in the lime green car. So lots of great partners out there. And as you can see on our screen, we've got them all called out. They're all getting ready. Drivers are getting in their sims or getting locked in, and we should have some amazing racing here shortly. So excited to kick off the first of 3 races.
No, absolutely. And I think we're going to see some really good, movement from last week to see, where some of the guys were still trying to learn a few things. And I'm very interested to see how we can comment on that as it moves forward through this tournament as soon as it's ready to go live.
Definitely. And so we talked about partners going into STEM.org. We're excited to see, partner with STEM. STEM.org is the presenting sponsor of the D3eSports Cup Virtual Championship. They're the largest continually operating, privately held STEM educational research and credentially organized in America since 2001, supporting the world's top brands, organizations, and thousands of educators globally. Huge shout out to STEM.org. They've been a great partner. They're making this come together for us, and really excited to. So hearing this, we're actually going to be starting our race here shortly. So we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with you. Stay tuned.
I don't wanna stand here while you fall apart. Even though you told me to get back your heart, I still spin inside your orbit.